Before we begin, take a second. If stories like this move you, make you think, or stay with you long after they end, then don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel, because some stories aren't just told, they're felt, and this is one of them. Tuesday mornings had a way of blending into one another, not in a bad way, not exactly, just predictably, quietly, like pages in a book you've already read once before. That particular Tuesday began, like all the others had since Richard passed away. And since the children had grown up and scattered into lives of their own, the house had settled into a kind of stillness, not empty, no, never empty. It was full of memories, of laughter that once echoed down the hallway, of footsteps that no longer hurried down the stairs. My name is Carol, by the way, and I suppose if you had to describe me, you'd say I was a woman tending to the small, fragile garden of her remaining days. Not just the one outside with the marigolds and roses, but the one inside too. The one made of memories. That morning, sunlight poured gently through the kitchen window, the way it always did around mid-morning. It caught the steam rising from my second cup of coffee and turned it into something almost magical, like tiny floating rainbows dancing in the air. It was peaceful, comfortably so. I had finally decided after months of avoiding it that I would tackle the bookshelf in the den. It had become something of a silent accusation. Books stacked sideways, others piled on top, receipts and bookmarks sticking out like forgotten thoughts. 6 months, I had told myself. 6 months of I'll get to it tomorrow. Well, that Tuesday, I meant it. Or at least I thought I did, because just as I rolled up my sleeves and mentally prepared myself for dust and decisions, the doorbell rang. Now, that may not sound like much to you, but when you live the kind of life I do, where days pass in gentle repetition, an unexpected knock or chime carries a certain weight. Visitors were rare. Occasionally, a delivery. Sometimes Martha from next door, usually with a reason that involved either sugar or gossip or both. But this felt different. There was a small flutter in my chest as I wiped my hands on my apron and made my way to the door. Not fear, just curiosity, the kind that wakes you up a little. I leaned toward the peephole, and there he was. A young man stood on my porch, a book tucked under his arm, tall, slightly awkward in posture. Sandy blonde hair that seemed to have its own ideas about direction. It took me a second, but then it clicked. Liam, Tom, and Sarah's son from across the street, except not really a boy anymore. No, time had done what it always does, quietly, without asking permission. He must have been what, 27, 28 now. I hadn't seen him properly since he left for college. Funny how that happens. Children grow up somewhere between your memories and your distractions. I opened the door, already smiling. "Liam," I said warmly. "What a surprise. Come in," he smiled back, a little shyly, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes first. "Hi, Mrs. Henderson. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied quickly. I was just about to wage war against an overgrown bookshelf. "You might have saved me from it." He let out a small laugh, stepping inside. The house greeted him the way it always did, with the scent of lemon polish and old paper, a smell I'd come to think of as mine. "Mom asked me to return this," he said, holding out the book. I recognized it instantly, a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. One I had lent Sarah weeks ago. "She finished it," he added, "but you know how she is. She meant to bring it back sooner." I chuckled softly. Yes, that sounds like her. I took the book gently, running my fingers along its spine like greeting an old friend. "Well, thank you for bringing it back, Liam." I hesitated for only a moment before adding, almost instinctively, "Would you like to stay for a bit? I just made coffee, or I could make iced tea if you prefer." The offer slipped out naturally. Old habits of hospitality, I suppose. For a second, I thought he might decline, but then he nodded. Coffee sounds great. If it's really not a problem. Not at all, I said, gesturing toward the kitchen. Come, sit. My kitchen had always been the heart of the house. Yellow walls. A bit cluttered, admittedly. Canisters labeled in handwriting that had grown shakier over the years. Recipe books stacked in corners like trusted companions. The window above the sink looked out onto my little backyard, where a particularly bold blue jay was currently making its presence known at the feeder. Liam sat down at the table, placing the book carefully on the checkered cloth. He looked slightly out of place, not in a bad way, just different. Like someone from another rhythm of life stepping briefly into mine. I poured him a cup of coffee, the aroma filling the room. So, I said, handing it to him, how have you been? Last I heard, you were working in the city. Something in technology. He nodded, taking a sip. Yeah, software development. Keeps me busy. He paused, then added with a small smile, this is really good coffee. Well, I said lightly, the secret is a cinnamon stick in the grounds. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Cinnamon. I wouldn't have guessed that. Most people don't, I replied with a soft laugh. There was a brief silence then, not awkward, just quiet, the kind that allows a moment to settle. His eyes wandered around the kitchen, eventually resting on the corkboard by the phone, old photographs pinned there. My children at different ages. A younger version of me and Richard on a beach, smiling at something I can no longer remember. It's nice in here, Liam said finally. Feels warm, like my grandmother's house used to. That caught me off guard, in the best way. Thank you, I said gently. That's a lovely thing to say. We sat there for a while, the clock ticking in the hallway. The distant hum of a lawnmower somewhere down the street. Simple sounds, familiar ones, and yet something about the moment felt different. I noticed his hands wrapped around the mug. Not boyish anymore. Strong, steady. There were faint ink marks on his fingers. A writer, perhaps. Or just someone who still used a pen. His expression shifted, softened. I did, he said. Actually, I ended up rereading parts of it after Mom finished. He paused, thoughtful. It still hits the same. Maybe even harder now. I nodded. It's one of those stories that doesn't age. Yeah, he agreed. It makes you think about doing the right thing, even when it's not easy. Then he looked at me, really looked, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't expected. People like Atticus Finch, he said quietly. They feel rare now, don't they? That question. It lingered in the air longer than it should have. It wasn't casual conversation. It wasn't small talk. It was something deeper. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a neighbor's son returning a book. This was the beginning of something I hadn't seen coming. Something that would quietly unfold, right there in my sunlit kitchen. Thanks for watching. If this story stayed with you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart.